Senator Carroll, Senator Douglas,
Present.
Senator Neal, Senator Nemes,
Present.
Senator Thomas, Representative Blanton,
Present.
Representative Burke,
Present.
Representative Fleming, Representative Lockett,
Here.
Representative Riley,
Here.
Representative Sharp,
Present.
Representative Stevenson, Vice Chair Howell, Co-Chair Bowling,
Here.
and Co-Chair Storm.
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you. This time I'd entertain a motion to approve the minutes from November 16th, 23.
Second.
Second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Ayes have it. This time we'll be hearing a staff presentation regarding single bid asphalt contracts. That's the first agenda item. At this meeting, we'll hear the report that you all have, or the presentation, I should say. The committee members have received a confidential draft of the report that's still under review. It's in a working document, and we'll seek input on the draft report in the event that there's any changes or modifications. We'll take that up in January at the committee meeting. This time, please pursue.
Good afternoon. I'm Jeremy Skinner, and this is Ryan Brown, and we are both analysts for the Legislative Oversight and Investigations Committee. We're here today to present a summary of our most recent study. It's on the procurement processes related to asphalt contracts, with an emphasis on single bid contracts. The committee selected this as a study topic in 2022. This study reviewed asphalt contracts approved by the Kentucky Transportation Cabinet from January 2018 through July 2023. Asphalt is a composite material made of liquid asphalt and aggregates such as crushed stone, sand, and gravel, and it's primarily used for surfacing roads. The mix of the components, the aggregate and the liquid asphalt, that varies based on the application and the client's requirements or specifications. Asphalt is produced at a high temperature and must be applied before it cools and becomes too rigid to spread and compact properly. For transportation cabinet work, asphalt must be produced at above 300 degrees, and it must arrive at the site before cooling below 210 degrees, though the specific temperatures may vary based on the work. Executive branch procurement typically follows the Model Procurement Code, but the Cabinet has an exemption for the construction and maintenance of roads. Any contractor that intends to bid on a transportation cabinet project must be pre-qualified. The pre-qualification process evaluates a contractor's resources, experiences, and past project performance. Contractors are approved for specific work types, and there's also a maximum amount of cabinet work that a contractor can have at any one time. For this project, we looked at the two asphalt work classifications, which are C1, or lower volume roadways, and C2, which are higher volume roadways such as interstates and parkways. Highway construction and maintenance projects are posted monthly for competitive bidding. These monthly postings are called lettings, and a letting is a compilation of projects that are posted for bids. The schedule is set before the beginning of the year, but the annual letting schedule doesn't actually name specific projects. The Cabinet releases a tentative 4-month letting schedule that details specific projects that is tentative and just gives project details that will be coming in the coming months. Projects are advertised in a leading statewide newspaper and on the Cabinet website. The project information on the Cabinet's website contains detailed specifications for the project describing how the work should be done. Contractors compete on the cost of individual components, which are collectively called unit bid prices. Bids are submitted through an online bidding platform. Contractors must register to bid on individual projects. The Cabinet lists the contractors who have registered for each project. The Cabinet prepares an engineer's estimate to evaluate bids. The estimate is an assessment of the project's costs and is described as the cost if the Cabinet completed the project. The engineer's estimate is not publicly provided until bids are opened and is not released at all if there are no bids on a project. Contracts are awarded to the lowest responsive bidder. This table shows contracts awarded from January 2018 through July 2023. The Cabinet awarded a total of $3.6 billion in asphalt contracts over these years. The low totals for 2020 are an aberration due to COVID, and the low totals in 2023 are due to it only reflecting through July of 2023. In each year, the total awarded contracts were less than the total engineer's estimate.
In Finding Area 1, staff analyzed KYTC data on all bids for asphalt construction projects from January 2018 through July 2023 to determine the frequency of single bid contracts and how they affect procurement. Generally, single bid projects were the most frequent result for awarded contracts. While single bid contracts are typically associated with higher costs, the financial impact has been inconsistent over time. From 2018 to 2023, single bid contracts were awarded at about 100.5% of the engineer's estimate, while contracts with two bidders were awarded at 93.6% of the engineer's estimate. On a year-to-year basis, the difference decreased in 2022 and 2023. The prevalence of single bid contracts can be attributed to complex factors such as the type of work and local geographic and economic conditions. This chart displays the total number of awarded asphalt projects from January 2018 to July 2023, along with the number of projects that were awarded to single bidders. During most years, about half of all awards went to single bidders, though this percentage was lower in 2020 at 28% and higher in the first 7 months of 2023 at 63%. This slide is an abbreviated version of Table 3.2 from the report on page 21. It shows the total awarded amount for contracts in each year divided by the total engineer's estimate. Essentially, it represents the savings compared to the engineer's estimate. This slide focuses on the difference between single bid and two bidder contracts. In general, awarded projects with one bidder cost more relative to their engineer's estimate than those with two or more bidders. From 2018 to 2023, projects with single bidders totaled 100.5% of their estimated costs, while projects with two bidders totaled 93.5% of their estimated costs, representing a 7 percentage points difference in cost between one and two bidders. However, this cost differential was not consistent over time, as the difference between one and two bidders in 2022 was much smaller than any previous year, and projects with two bidders were actually more costly than those with one bidder in 2023. This table shows the characteristics of the 7 largest work types, which represent 96% of all work. These work types are used by KYTC project managers to classify the work being let and establish pre-qualification requirements for potential bidders. The most common type, asphalt resurfacing, accounts for 73% of all asphalt work, with more than half of its contracts awarded to single bidders. The next most common work type had less than 3% single bid contracts. Aside from this category, most of the other major work types exhibited similar characteristics, usually with fewer than 2 bids per project and roughly half of awarded projects going to single bidders. This map shows the Cabinet's 12 highway districts, which are groupings of counties that oversee highway construction and maintenance projects in their respective counties. Each district also shows single bid contracts as a percentage of all contracts in that district. The frequency of single bid awards depends on the location. Typically, they are more prevalent in rural areas compared to urban ones. Urban areas tend to have a higher concentration of projects within a smaller geographic area, which allows for more contractors to potentially submit bids. Districts 5, 6, and 7 are all centered around major urban centers in the state, so one would expect that there to be far fewer single bid awards in these 3 districts compared to other districts. However, districts 5 and 6 in yellow have much lower rates than district 7 in orange. In Finding Area 2, staff evaluated the competitiveness of the Kentucky asphalt market. The prevalence of single bid asphalt contracts could be attributed to this market. Kentucky's asphalt market has limited competitiveness due to restrictions in asphalt production, a limited number of producers, and locations of asphalt plants in the state. The production of asphalt is limited by transport time, which is heavily influenced by the temperature of asphalt. Interviewed contractors stated that there is a 30 to 45 minute limit on travel time, with an hour possible under optimal circumstances. Asphalt must be delivered at a minimum of 200 to 280 degrees, depending on the project. The industry as a whole has a work season that is limited by air temperature. One contractor stated that it worked from April through November, with others indicating similar timelines. With transportation being so important, contractors are reliant on the supply of drivers and trucks. Interviewed contractors indicated that they had difficulty obtaining trucks and hiring staff, with hiring more difficult because of the limited work season. The market also has significant barriers to entry. Contractors indicated that a plant cost at least $5 to $7 million, which does not include material or staffing. This can make investing in a new plant risky if there are existing competitors. The number of asphalt contractors has stayed relatively the same across years at around 50. However, the average number of bidders per contract decreased from 1.9 to 1.5. Either there is a limited competition in these areas or there is little interest in bidding on state work. Many single bid projects are won by a small number of contractors, with 5 contractors winning 65% of single bid contracts. A small number of contractors have state work heavily represented by single bid contracts, with 17 winning over half of their projects as the sole bidder. Asphalt plants tend to be more common around Louisville and Lexington, while rural areas have fewer plants. Asphalt can be transported a limited distance from plants, so areas with fewer plants will naturally have less competition. When you consider that some plants also have overlapping ownership, there is even less competition. 6 companies own more than half of plants in Kentucky. This map shows in-state plants registered with the Plant Mix Asphalt Industry of Kentucky, along with out-of-state plants registered to bid on on cabinet projects. Many of the plants in eastern Kentucky are owned by Mountain Enterprises. Hinkle Contracting owns plants near East Kentucky as well as other areas of the state, giving it a broad reach. In the southwest, 4 plants are owned by Rogers Group, and 1 is owned by Jim Smith Contracting. In South Central, Scotty's Contracting and Stone has plants across multiple counties, and ATS has 6 plants that run from Fayette County to Whitley County. This chart illustrates the largest plant owners in the state in relation to all other plant owners. Together, these 6 companies own 57 plants, or 54% of all asphalt plants registered with the Plant Mix Asphalt Industry of Kentucky. 28 others own the remaining plants. This map shows the percentage of all asphalt contracts in each county that were awarded to a single bidder. Red and orange indicate where single bid contracts are most common. In most areas, the patterns match expectations based on plant locations. They are common in the southwest and east, but uncommon near Louisville and northern Kentucky. However, as outlined in blue here, many counties near Fayette have high rates of single bid contracts. To look more closely at these counties, the next slide has a percentage of single bids in this highlighted region. This table shows the percentage of projects in Fayette and surrounding counties that were awarded to single bidders. Fayette had the highest number of overall awarded projects, and almost 70% of awards were single bid contracts. Clark County had the highest rate of single bid contracts. Woodford was the only county with no single bids awarded. The unusually high rate of single bid projects for an urban area resulted in our first recommendation. Recommendation 3.1 is that the cabinet should monitor single bid asphalt contracts in central Kentucky. If the pattern continues, it should contact non-bidding contractors to determine if there is a structural reason why they do not submit bids. The cabinet agreed to periodic inquiries with regional industry owners into the reasons bids are not submitted on projects.
In our third and final finding area, staff compared cabinet policies to federal guidance and neighboring states to determine if the cabinet's policies are optimal to compensate for market weaknesses and barriers to entry. The Federal Highway Administration provides best practices and recommendations to state transportation agencies interested in improving their bid review and evaluation process. The guidelines are not binding law, but serve as recommendations to encourage a fair and competitive bidding process. Kentucky generally follows federal guidance, specifically with regards to pre-qualification processes, non-collusion statements, and in the advertising and structuring of projects. In the following slides, we will explore a few areas where Kentucky either deviates or doesn't fully follow federal guidance to the letter. Kentucky deviates from federal guidance in that it publishes a list of registered bidders for all projects in a monthly letting before bidding closes. Federal guidance indicates that keeping the list of registered bidders confidential encourages a more competitive environment and decreases the likelihood of collusion. Here's an example of a project from the Cabinet's most recent letting. In this example, there are 3 registered bidders for the project. The Cabinet states that it posts bidders lists to facilitate communication between bidders and potential subcontractors. And this is a pretty common practice. In our review of our neighboring states, 5 of the 7 neighboring states reviewed also publish a list of eligible bidders prior to the close of lettings. An official from the Illinois Department of Transportation echoed Kentucky's Cabinet statement that posting a list of potential bidders is beneficial both to subcontractors and to disadvantaged business enterprises, or DBEs. Illinois also maintains a separate list of non-bidders for each job posting that is often used by material suppliers and subcontractors that do not intend to bid on a contract. While FHWA acknowledges that publishing a list of eligible bidders is useful to subcontractors and DBEs, federal guidance suggests that the practice could potentially encourage collusion. Given that single bid projects are the most frequent result for asphalt projects in Kentucky, and that federal guidance suggests keeping eligible bidder lists confidential, doing so creates a more competitive environment. Our next recommendation is that the Cabinet should transition to keeping registered bidders list confidential, or at least waiting until there are 3 potential bidders on a project before releasing the identities of plan holders. The Cabinet should provide an option for subcontractors to indicate interest in the project so primary contractors can identify potential subcontractors. The Cabinet agreed with this recommendation and will pursue implementation in calendar year 2024. It will develop a process to share lists of interested subcontractors. Kentucky's engineer estimate appears to use a method suggested by federal guidance. However, staff could not verify the actual methods. Cabinet staff stated they did not want to release that information on the engineer's estimate because it could undermine their estimates and bidding competitiveness. While appropriate, the Cabinet may find it difficult to justify project estimates if their methods cannot be verified. A method to verify estimates would allow the Cabinet to defend its process if and when there are complaints about their estimates. A 2014 federal report found that 25 other states have developed internal cost estimating guidance or manuals. Our third recommendation is that the Cabinet should ensure that it has an internal process to verify its engineer's estimate, to ensure that the estimate accurately represents project costs. The Cabinet agrees with the recommendation, stating that they have a process to verify the engineer's estimate, which includes secondary reviews and periodic independent reviews. This process will be captured in their policy going forward. Kentucky complies with federal guidance on the evaluation of bids, but it does not have written procedures for justifying the award of contracts or the rejection of bids. The lack of a written policy can create the appearance of arbitrary decisions. Based on the analysis of bids, the Cabinet tends to reject bids that are 10% over the estimates, but there are exceptions. For example, we noted in our report that the Cabinet has approved bids up to 37% higher than the estimate. Recommendation 3.4 is that the Cabinet should develop written guidance for justifying the award or rejection of a bid. These should include when the Cabinet can make exceptions to the guidance and how that should be documented. The Cabinet disagreed with this recommendation, stating that they need flexibility and discretion to consider bids without revealing the threshold for awarding projects. While reviewing rejected bids, staff found the Cabinet posted unit bid prices even when all bids were rejected. Unit bids show how much contractors priced components of the project, and the unit bids essentially make up their overall bid. There is no federal guidance here, but the posting can undermine competitiveness if the project is rebid. This can allow contractors to readjust their bids based on their competitors instead of bidding based on efficiency and expected profit. One contractor we spoke to expressed frustration about competitors pricing around its offer rather than providing their best offer. This slide shows a screenshot of a project where both bids were rejected. However, the unit bid prices for each bidder were posted online. If this project were posted again, competitors could gain an advantage by knowing a competitor's unit bid prices. So our fifth recommendation is that the cabinet should cease posting unit bid prices when it rejects all bids on a project, unless it can determine it is in the cabinet's best interest to post the prices. The cabinet agrees with this recommendation, stating that it will pursue protecting bid details until after the project is awarded. Finally, federal guidelines stress that states should check for recent or current bid rigging. They recommend a period for 5 years for the initial evaluation. It suggests multiple criteria like number of awards to a specific contractor, project bid tabulations, and firms that submitted a bid on a project and then became a subcontractor. The majority of states responding to a 2017 survey said they use a software program within a commonly used highway construction project software to detect collusion. The cabinet uses similar software and could use a similar program. Our final recommendation is that the cabinet should use procurement software to detect potential collusion. The cabinet should have a policy to provide evidence to authorities if collusion is suspected. The cabinet agreed with the recommendation, saying that the software they currently use includes a data analytics model which was released in the summer of 2023. They are currently familiarizing themselves with this module. That concludes our presentation. Ryan and myself, along with our staff administrator, William Spears, will be happy to answer any questions you have for us. Thanks.
Please stand at ease one moment. Representative Fleming has a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate going through and giving us sort of an understanding of the bidding process and so forth. Did you uncover or find any indication of quality in the bidding and the criteria looking at awarding the bid? You mentioned resources, experience, and past project performance. So the question is, where's quality?
On individual projects, they are awarded to the lowest qualified bidder that submits the bid. The pre-qualification process is there to ensure that the contractors that submit bids have the necessary financial and material resources to complete the projects that are being led by the cabinet.
Go ahead.
Yes, the pre-qualification process. As part of that, I guess in order to assess the contractor, potential contractors' quality and performance, that goes into that past work experience, and also it goes with the specifications required by the state. In their specifications, the work required is supposed to be up to a certain quality level. So I think that's where that's supposed to be captured as well. But
If you don't mind, so could you peel that back a little more? What do they mean by quality?
By quality, as like on individual jobs, like how they.
Yeah, I mean, quality is basically deals with the material, how long it lasts.
Mm-hmm.
You said that they say that they use past project performance. I imagine that's basically making sure that the project adheres to the the specifications as well as a time frame of completing that project. But I'm talking also about when it project ends, how long do they have to go back and resurface, or what's the endurance of the material that they use? Because we get a lot of issues and problems, within District 5 or with potholes. That goes not no wear and tear, but I'm looking at the quality of the product.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with the specific specifications on like the asphalt being used. The cabinet might be able to answer that question better, but I do know that contractors do go through a periodic review process where they are evaluated based on the performance, and presumably if there was an area where they didn't perform well, I assume that would be reflected in that review.
One more.
I would like to add to that. That was technically out of the scope of the project because we looked at the award of the contract. We did briefly talk to them, so I know they do some tests after the asphalt has been put down to see if it meets their quality. One that was mentioned to me, I believe, was a compaction test. So when the cabinet comes up, I would suggest asking them about that and seeing what specific test they use to verify the quality of their work.
Okay. One more question, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. So there is a pre-qualification they have to go through and be on a qualified list, and then they come in on the next phase in terms of providing the prices, right? So going back into the pre-qualification process, do they discuss, and did you look at how different components of the pre-qualification is weighted?
There is I believe there is a formula in regulation. I don't have that on hand right now, but it is, I believe it is used to score an application.
And did y'all look at that, making sure they adhere to those statutes?
No, that
Okay.
wasn't in the scope of the
Okay.
report.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Representative or Co-Chair Bowling.
Thank you, sir. My question goes back to, I guess, the issue of single bids, and how does Kentucky compare to other states? How do we compare to our regional states, Tennessee, Virginia? I mean, did you all look at that, and was that information? I didn't hear you speak about it in the presentation, but did you all look at that specifically, or just Kentucky's process?
Mostly just Kentucky's. We had, in order to get the information on the number of bidders on particular contracts, that was a request we made to the Transportation Cabinet. So in order to do that for other states, it would be a similar process because for the most part, they don't post that information online just for, so it would be quite a bit of data collection and going through those respective transportation agencies in the
Okay.
different states.
So
Figure that out,
that's not something you feel like you could add to this report without
No.
going and
Yeah, it would-
requesting it,
Yes.
from the other states and then
Yes.
providing that
Yeah.
to Kentucky.
Yeah, from our perspective, single bids were just they are considered to be somewhat of just from a competitive standpoint, just somewhat of a risk in that sense, just because you always want to have more competitiveness in any kind of market situation.
And do y'all have any data on, I guess, the percentage of bids that go over the engineer's estimate?
I
Or
don't. We don't have it
exact
on.
number or the percentage.
Yes, we don't have it on hand right now, but we could provide that for you later.
Okay, I think that'd be very useful information. If you could put it in the report, add that to the report, that'd be very helpful. I would imagine. Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you.
Representative Burke.
Thank you, Chairman. My question is very similar to Co-Chair Bowling's. Specifically, my question relates to how Kentucky compares in the amount spent, whether in a single bid or multiple bidder situation, for asphalt contracts. Does that compare across states? Because at the end of the day, if it's a single bidder situation and we're paying what we would pay in Tennessee or Ohio, then I don't really see a huge issue. So
Yes.
that is my question.
Yes, and that's a valid point. We don't have that information just because like we said before, it'd be the same situation with having to go through those transportation agencies. But yes, we're not. Unfortunately, we can't answer that with the data we have currently. So yeah.
Thank you.
Representative Blanton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you all for the job you did on this report. Couple questions. When we're talking about the single bid contracts, when these single bid contracts these lettings took place, anybody that wanted to, that was eligible as a bidder could bid, did they not?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Thank you. And it being an open market and it was open to anybody and they chose not to, then Kentucky can't just sit back and not move on with a project that's necessary, that's been found to be necessary. And I know that, for example, in my district, there was a resurfacing letting went out and it came back over the engineer's estimate. And so they rejected the bid and they had to rebid it. And so it wasn't like they just took any bid, just because they bid doesn't mean they'll automatically get it if it's not within a certain percentage of the engineer's estimates, correct?
Yes, and we were able to see several when we were reviewing past committee meetings that they have, where similar situations like that happen, where something was bid, it was over the estimate. Maybe one, I don't know how many people bid on it, but and they would come back, and then eventually, it's just, like I said, it's something that has to be done at a certain point. So yes, yeah.
I mean, I'm just trying to understand if we've got an open market to where people who want to bid can bid, but they're choosing not to.
Yep.
Again, we got to move forward with the work that needs to be done.
Yes, and I think that's where most of these recommendations come down, where it's not saying making a judgment on that one way or another. We're just saying the policies, anything they can do in their policy to encourage competitiveness, great. Let's do that. So
Well, I know we have a sort of a moratorium on coal-fired plants in this country right now, but we don't on asphalt plants. So if they want to build asphalt plants within a region to where they can reach the projects, then they're free to do that. It's a free market, correct?
yes.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. We, looks like Senator Douglas has a question.
That did stimulate this. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In your investigation, did you find any frustration among some of the other companies about having made bids in the past and then been frustrated because of those bids going to a single source?
I'll answer that for the staff. We contacted a few different companies. 4 of them got back to us. Generally, we actually didn't get a lot of feeling of frustration over single bids. It felt like everyone accepted that the market itself meant that often it would just go to the one person who bid there. They seemed fairly understanding about that. And generally, the contractors seemed supportive of the cabinet. They, much to our surprise, they liked most of the policies. I'll check with staff, but they seem to be nodding. But I don't think we ever heard a lot of concern about the single bids themselves. The one concern we did hear about was when all bids are rejected and posting unit bid prices, because the company essentially felt like the cabinet gave away their information so anyone else could bid against them more easily. That was the big complaint that stood out to us.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Thomas.
Mr. Chair, I understand why we may want to take a look at this, but here's the information I've gathered from all the questions that have been asked. And Representative Fleming, Representative Blanton have asked some really good questions. What I'm hearing is the quality of the bidder is fine. There's no issue. We talk about quality. There are 2 pieces here. One, what's the quality of the bidder? Is the bidder someone who can get the job done? And then 2, what's the quality of the work? Okay. Well, the quality of bidder seems to be fine here. Okay. According to the questions asked by Representative Fleming, there's no indication that the quality of the work is not fine. There's been no questions about the quality of the work. And of course, when you talk about District 7, I travel those roads constantly. And I've heard no complaints from the people in District 7 about the asphalt work being laid in those roads. And I tell you, I travel them a lot. Going back to Representative Burke's questions, we don't know that there's any difference in the bidding process in other states. I mean, what we may be doing here in Kentucky could be very similar to what's going on in the states adjacent to us: Tennessee, Virginia, West Virginia, Ohio. I mean, there's nothing that says that we're doing anything out of line. Going to Representative Blanton's point, which I think he probably made the best point possible. The bottom line is we don't want to get the work done. And Representative Blanton is right. And I travel Eastern Kentucky too, Representative Blanton. And I've heard several times how projects have been delayed, trying to get more bidders. And all that does is hurt the residents down there in Floyd County and in Pike County and in Johnson County. So at the end of the day, we want to get the work done, okay? And I think Representative Blanton's point is very well taken. Finally, and I think here's the icing on the cake. What I just heard was there's no complaints from competitive entities about how we're doing the process. It's not like someone feels like, I'm being kept out of the market or I'm being an opportunity to deny business. So as I sit here and listen to all these different points, I'm trying to figure out what's the problem here. I just don't see a problem unless I'm missing something.
I mean, our report's not necessarily saying there's a problem with the industry necessarily, other than there are some barriers to entry, just like there are in any industry. But and as far, yeah, absolutely, yeah, absolutely, yes, there's no doubt about that. And as far as comparing to other states, we did review all of our 7 neighboring states, and for the most part, the policies they have for their transportation procurement, their asphalt procurement at least, is very similar to Kentucky's. Yes.
Seeing no further questions, thank you all for your presentation. At
Thank
this
you.
time, if the cabinet would like to come up, introduce yourselves for the record, and then you may proceed.
Did I just close the computer?
Please identify yourselves, and then you may proceed.
I'm James Ballinger, Kentucky Transportation Cabinet State Highway Engineer.
John Moore, Deputy State Highway Engineer.
Will Fogel, General Counsel for the Transportation Cabinet.
Okay. First of all, I'd like to say thank you for the opportunity to respond today and to the recommendations that's been proposed by Mr. Spears and his colleagues, Mr. Brown and Mr. Skinner, and I'd like to thank the committee for allowing us to be here today and to respond. We do appreciate the external review of our bidding and awards process and are interested in and have been independently pursuing many of the recommendations that are contained in the report. Our single reservation is related to prescribing the awards in the rejection process in recommendation 3.4, which has already been stated. Due to current law requiring the engineer's estimate to be published at bid opening, it is especially important to ensure flexibility and discretion in the event a project requires multiple attempts to be awarded. And that's what we talked about just a moment ago in the multiple attempts that we sometimes have to advertise and let a project. But as noted in the report and documented in our construction procurement policy manual, the Cabinet considers a number of factors when we review the bids. And going to read through these. These factors include comparison of the bids to the engineer's estimate. And just for clarification on the engineer's estimate, there's lots of different estimates that we calculate when we're developing a project. Sometimes those are for planning purposes. Sometimes they're for funding purposes. Sometimes we'll do an estimate so that we can consider a project for inclusion in the highway plan. We have our teams that develop the project, so they'll do a construction cost estimate and ask us to do that, and we'll ask them to put it together for our planning purposes. But the engineer's estimate, though, is an independent estimate that's been calculated for what we think the value of that project should be, and we use that as a comparison, though, to determine award of that project or not. Another factor is the number of bids submitted, the distribution or the range of the bids received, the geographic location of the bidders, potential savings with re-advertising a project, comparison of recent bids for similar items, and sometimes even the urgency of the project, though, as we've talked about. If there's a project that needs to be led, it's getting late in the year, or we have some type of an issue, something safety related, and we've had those situations before. So sometimes we decide that it's in the best interest that we need to go ahead and get that project awarded and built, though, for the interest and the safety of the taxpayers and the citizens. We look at also the letting history. We look at market conditions. And that's certainly been a component of the last few years, though, with the volatility we've seen in the market, though, with the supply chain, with the labor issues, some of even the trucking issues that's already been mentioned. We have to consider those factors. Also, we look and make sure there's no unbalanced bids. And then we look at those unit bids as compared to the engineer estimate unit bids. We break that project down not only into the total bids that we receive to the engineer's estimate, but we look at each item and make sure there's not anything unusual or unbalanced about that bid. We have to consider our funding availability when that bid comes in. We got to make sure we're going to be able to pay for that project. And then there's other factors that we sometimes consider. We have an awards committee that's made up. It's a multidisciplinary team made up of, I chair the committee, a state highway engineer. We've got 2 deputy state highway engineers, 2 assistant state highway engineers, and the deputy secretary for the transportation cabinet that makes up the awards committee, though. And it's a multidisciplinary team, though, with a lot of experience, though, when we consider that. And we take the recommendations from our team of professionals, though, that develop those engineer estimates, though, and make those decisions. But sometimes, though, when difficult decisions are made regarding award or rejection of a bid, we document that decision, and then when appropriate, we share with our industry representatives the factors that made that project unique. Kind of in closing today, we appreciate the effort, the detail, and the attention that went into this report. The recommendations have confirmed the direction that the cabinet is pursuing in many instances. For example, and it's been talked about here today, an independent review of the engineer's estimate and recommendation 3.3 is being documented currently in our policies. At this time, we would entertain any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Thank you. Co-Chair Bowling.
Thank you, sir. My question kind of goes to getting the most bang for your buck, so to speak. And I know that cost on any type of construction, whether it's residential, commercial, road paving, whatever it might be, has gone up significantly the last handful of years. I know that Representative Upchurch had a bill to look at using more recycled material in our asphalt production. Where do y'all stand on that as far as that being a possibility for our state?
Okay. We are currently working together kind of with the industry, though, on a committee. And we're looking at the technical aspects of how we can use more recycled asphalt pavement. We call it RAP in our mixtures today. And we have a team of our engineers and our technicians, though, that are looking at where that would make sense to do that to be able to produce asphalt that is more efficient. And we also, though, and it's a really important aspect of it, is that we have to look at the recycled asphalt pavement, we call it RAP, that comes off the project, so that we have, and then we place that back into the mixture. It may be milled up, it'd be hauled in the trucks back to the asphalt plant and then reintroduced, though. But we have to really, really look at that from a technical standpoint, because you can't just put, say 30, 40, 50% recycled asphalt pavement in there and just then hope that everything is going to work out okay in the end. We have to make sure that we talk about the durability of the mixes, though. We have to make sure that those mixes are designed properly, and we've got a team that's looking at how we can maximize the amount of recycled asphalt pavement. It's good for a lot of reasons. For the cost of the project, environmentally it's good. It's good to recycle as much as we can, of course, and place that back into our mixes. So we're working together with the technical part of the industry, though, to see how we can make some changes to our policies and make that happen. Okay. Thank you.
And will there be like a report issued at the end, or is it just kind of an ongoing conversation, see how it does? What's the process of getting that deployed if we think it's worth it? But and my biggest concern is just, I don't think anybody has any desire to have their taxes raised. But then with the cost escalating and continuing to escalate year after year, is how do we get the most bang for our buck, the most coverage, the most, get good quality roads at a good price for our citizens?
That's a great point, though, and we're working hard every day to do that with the professionals in the cabinet to do that. And I don't know per se that we would need to do a report, but we're looking at those kind of changes where we may change our specifications within how we develop and design our asphalt mixes, though. And so those are the kind of things that are ongoing. We're doing that continually, and we will continue to do that. And we would be happy to come back and issue some type of a report or something on those efforts if that's desired. It's no problem at all. John, did you have anything further on that?
I would, Mr. Ballinger summarized it very well. Would just offer that the potential savings in using additional wrap in our mixes, it's not going to be a tremendously significant percentage savings overall in the program. It will has the potential to impact certain projects, but historically we've not seen a tremendous price differential when using higher wrap, but it is a higher sustainability opportunity, and we're very interested in using all of our materials to the greatest extent that we can. But I don't want to oversell that as a silver bullet for the paving industry. It's very positive, no doubt, but that's not the overall answer, unfortunately.
Understood. Thank you all.
Senator Thomas. Oh, I'm sorry. Representative Sharp.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First thing you were talking about, it was federal law concerning the bid opening. Is that federal or state law?
That is state law. KRS 176.080 requires us to publish the engineer's estimate upon bid opening.
Okay, thank you. I have another question, Mr. Chair. I'm going to continue. From the time you guys let the bid out, what's the typical time for the contract being awarded?
We generally on vast majority of our projects, we offer a 3-week window to consider to receive bids, and then it is our goal within a week and a half to consider those bids and to award or reject those projects.
Okay. In my district, the district I represent in Lawrence County, having an issue with a bridge. It's been out for several years. It's already been funded, but I'm not seeing any work done, and I keep getting told different things about the contract being let out, and it's a public safety issue concerning the people that live on the other side of this bridge. It's George Creek's bridge. Is there something that I'd like if you guys could find out what's going on and report back?
Sure. Absolutely, though. We can do that, Representative, and we could talk after the meeting and get the specifics of that location. I think I'm familiar with it, but I want to make sure I know exactly which bridge it is that you refer to, and we'll get you that information. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Vice Chair Howell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just kind of following up on that. First of all, thank you for your time and cooperating with the committee on this. I know y'all have a lot of other stuff to do, and even today, so we appreciate your time here today as well. Kind of following up on that, a lot of discussions being had, and what I think I'm kind of hearing is that a lot of these single bid contracts, because of market forces, are just inevitable. If there's anything that you think to the contrary, we would like to hear it. And if not, is there anything that we need to put in place from a quality control standpoint for some of these single bid contracts? Do they create any quality control gaps or anything for you guys?
Just to answer that part, I guess first, the second part is that we perform the same quality control inspection. We do the materials testing on all projects, so no matter if they're a single bid or we have multiple bidders, though. So, we have a team of inspectors, though, that go out and take a look at those projects and make sure they're constructed and built according to our specifications. And so we also test the materials that are involved. And at the end of the project, though, is we make sure that there's a materials acceptance. And at the end of it, though, so we do that no matter which project it is, though. So from the quality standpoint, though, we feel like that there's no issues related to that particular issue. Did you have anything else, John?
No, you said it well.
Thank you all for your presentation.
Absolutely.
Members, Co-Chair Bowling and Representative Burke both mentioned data that they would like to perhaps be included in the final version of the report. I would ask staff to update the report pursuant to those requests, and then we'll defer accepting this report until a later date in January, if that's appropriate. Thank you all. At this time, I think that concludes most of the business. We do have an update. Committee staff provided some responses to member requests from November 16th. Those should be in your packets. Is there any announcements, Co-Chair? Comments? Anything else? No. Thank you all for your time. We're adjourned.